Good morning. This is Michael Vanderpool here in Tbilisi, and September 15, 2016. The reason I make a quick video here is because I've had many Georgian friends. Excuse the lighting here. This is just a quick impromptu video. Many Georgian friends have asked about this scientific article that came out on astrology, and about what I've understood to be the precession of the equinoxes does in fact, by technical calculations, put the solar sign back, in some cases, like back to the previous sign, if you're following Western astrology. And a lot of the concepts in Western astrology, the Magi Society has not been able to, thus far, been able to confirm in their testing and research. Therefore, I very much use as the primary tool in my astrological research, in my astrological consultations, in doing readings for people. My primary tool is Magi astrology, and the reason why is because it's absolutely not dependent upon the solar signs. It is very uniquely different in some very key ways than Western astrology. And I also like to, when I deal with people, on astrology consultations or readings, I like to give them the fixed stars chart and point out some key points about that, because this is another type of astrology that's a bit more rare, but it's massively important in its insights for people to have and to understand. So when we deal with Magi astrology, we are dealing primarily with the aspects between planets. We are not in any way dealing with solar signs unless it's simply to point out the location of something. That doesn't have an effect on the actual aspects which are based upon NASA's ephemeris. And in fact, the Magi Society's Astrogeometry software, ephemeris, is more up to date because it is exact to NASA, whereas some very successful, popular online websites, such as one Americacn Swiss astrology site, is a little bit behind because it uses an outdated ephemeris not based on NASA's calculations. Therefore, when you see the news come out that the precession of the equinoxes or the calculations based on that demand that the solar signs are different, there's also the 13th sign theory, which is very interesting. And I don't have an opinion as to whether that's valid or not. It very well could be, but again, I'm using Magi astrology, and it's absolutely not at all in any way, really, dependent in its accuracy or its use on solar signs or the precession of the equinoxes, because the Magi Society software Astrogeometry is using and based on NASA's ephemeris. This is why it's even more accurate than the popular astrology site out of Switzerland, the Americacn Swiss site, because it's based on an outdated ephemeris. So if I am looking at Western astrology, if, for example, I do want to look at some of the planets and the houses, which we do not do in Magi astrology at this time, then, or if even I see some of the transits that, for example, the enemies around every corner transit of Chiron squaring Mars, which I haven't seen yet myself in use or described in Magi astrology, but I found in real life to be with real effects doing my own research, because the Astrogeometry software from the Magi Society is, in my opinion, the best professional level astrology software in the world, provided by the Magi Society, the world's most successful and largest astrological association, with 1/3 of its members being PhDs, and also probably having, I think, if I understood right, some of the most, in terms of amount of members, being wealthy as well, because it's a heavy emphasis on the financial astrology. So for those of you that are interested in that, I don't have that much interest in it. I've touched upon it. I've done successful stock market predictions a couple of times based on just Jupiter trine Pluto, for example. Also, that's a very important transit to look at in your personal life for positive success, energy, reform, and remake energy. But overall, the Magi Societies, they're not looking at a lot of the concepts in Western astrology, such as planets and houses or solar signs. Now, if you're going to follow Western astrology, you need to be doing this. You need to decide about whether your sign is affected by the precession of the equinoxes, as this current news is out. Once again, it comes out at least like once a year, it seems, to try to discredit astrologers and astrology. And typically, from what I understood, for a lot of people, that would mean going back one sign. But in my case, in Western astrology, I'm an Aries with Scorpio ascendant. Absolutely 100%, that's me. And whether the calculations in the precession of the equinox over the last 72,000 years or whatever, this in my case, I already know. Everybody that knows me knows that I'm 100% Scorpio rising and Aries, if you want to follow Western astrology. I look at Western astrology, I get some concepts from it, not much. The Magi Society has been unable to, or has not released, let's say at this time, anything that I'm aware of on any validity to the planets and the houses. We don't use the solar signs. I mean, at best you may say, oh well, this planet is in Aries at 21 degrees, but again, that we're not basing the astrology that we use is not at all based on solar signs. It's not. You could call it the dog sign. You could call it the tree sign. It doesn't matter, because what we're using and what we're looking at specifically is planets aspecting each other. And that's why the combined alignment charts, when you're looking at relationship charts basically, or partnership charts, you could call it that, we're looking at what planets link or positively connect between one partner and another, or we're looking at what planets clash between one partner and another, whether that's a romantic partnership or whether that's an actual business partnership or a family member or friendship or potential business partnership, whatever it is, that's what we're looking at. And it has not anything to do with solar signs. It has nothing to do with, well, if the solar signs change or whether the precession of the equinoxes are calculated and used by modern Western astrologers, because predominantly I am, number one, above all things, using Magi astrology as a research tool, in practice, in natalizations. I try to use it in first meetings. I've got a number of friends here in Georgia that I've been friends with for years, that I carefully chose a powerful, positive date to meet on, which is the day horoscope that we're looking at as a representation of the potential in the first meeting chart of that relationship. Secondly, my personal transits, which sets up an energy for the duration of that partnership or relationship, and then the other person's personal astrology transits, which sets up a lifelong energy in that potential partnership or relationship. So that's pretty simple in terms of of how we're using it, and it has nothing to do with the precession of the equinoxes in Magi astrology. And also, it's not so much at all based on the exact birth time. In fact, most Western and even some Vedic astrology will fail and be absolutely unusable, because most people don't know, even if they think they know, they don't know the exact birth time, clock time of their birth. And because of that, and in a lot of cases, some of the locations, believe it or not, are still not on the maps or in the software. Now, most can be, because we can enter it manually in using the Magi Society's Astrogeometry. So in other words, if you can give me longitude, latitude, it doesn't matter if you're born out by a tree in the middle of nowhere. If you can GPS that and give me the longitude, latitude, I can manually enter that into the Astrogeometry software by the Magi Society, and we can calculate that. But now, I got to be honest, on Fixed Stars program, if your city's not in there, then I may have to use the one near it or nearest that is to your city's location. And I run into a lot of people here in Georgia and the United States that have cities that are not in the Fixed Stars astrology software, which is from it has no relation at all to the Magi Society, the software that I'm using for Fixed Stars. But the Astrogeometry software, which I'm using from the Magi Society, the predominant focus of Magi astrology is on what planets are aspecting each other. It's also unique in that there's an Earth-centered chart, geocentric. There's a heliocentric chart, which is sun-centered. Both are very, very valid. The helio being more the outward energy in the object or the person of the chart. The astrology chart, Magi astral chart as we call it, which would be natal chart in Western astrology, or birth chart if you will. Also, there is not only the longitudinal chart which we are using, but there is the declinations chart that we are using. So the declinations chart is very, very unique. The charts, the Magi astrology charts, are what you would know, those familiar with Western astrology, what they call natal or birth charts. We call them Magi astro charts. They're very cool because it looks like a yin-yang in a sense. It reminds me of that. But it's like a target. Because not only do we look at planets that are aspecting each other in the longitudes, but we're also looking at the planets that are aspecting each other in the latitudes. We're also, at a professional level, we're using midpoints. So the middle point between two planets, that combined energy of those two planets, whether it's in a positive aspect or whether it's in a negative aspect, a linkage or a clash to a natal planet in transit or progression, is very, very much a powerful effect. And sometimes, oftentimes, I would rate that, just from my own personal experience, my own personal opinion. And I'm speaking for myself here. I do not represent the Magi Society, okay? So, but in my opinion, in my observations, just as powerful as singular planetary aspects or aspecting a natal planet. So in other words, the midpoint clashing a natal chiron, for example, heartbreak midpoint clashing natal chiron, for example, is just as strong, in my opinion, as Saturn clashing natal chiron, which is a heartbreak transit also. So things to know. If you're using Western astrology, then as Chiron of the Book of Numbers, or the great palmist and astrologer taught, Chiron's method, you also got to keep in mind that not only are you deciding about the precession of the equinox effect on your solar sign, but you're also deciding about the fact that between each sign there is 7 days total of cusp between the solar signs. So if you're born, let's say, July 20 or 21, you've got about 3 days before that and about 3 days after that day that puts you in the energy of both Cancer, if you're not considering the calculation of the precession of the equinoxes. In the equinox, you're both Cancer and Leo. So the further you move from 21, 22, 23, 24, maybe even 25, for example, then you're moving a little bit from Cancer, but you're still a Cancer and solar sign without consideration to the calculation of the precession of the equinox. But you're very much Leo. And conversely, if you go back, let's say you're born on the 21st of July, and you go back 20, 19, maybe 18, for example, then you're more Cancer, but you've still got Leo traits. So you've got a bit of both. So if you're using Western astrology, you need to know that. Also, you need to understand that the ascendant sign is very, very important. And if you're following a good weekly horoscope, astrologers that put out weekly horoscopes, or astrologers like Magi Helena in the past has put out great quarterly horoscopes, great ones. Magi Helena from the Magi Society in her Stargaze newsletter. I don't know where she's at with all that right now, but she's had some wonderful quarterly horoscopes for the signs. But there's two that you should be following, whether it's a weekly horoscope or a quarterly horoscope like Magi Helena's horoscopes that she's done in previous times that I've seen, you're not only following your solar sign, but you got to follow your rising or ascendant sign, because that's just as valid and just as important as your solar sign. And most people don't know these facts. In fact, I think I may have learned that from her myself, actually. Magi Betty has a wonderful blog and Twitter account that you can keep up and follow what's going on. That the Magi Society has some websites with some wonderful blogs and updates on what's going on, and she's, as well as Magi Helena, a wonderful, very talented, very knowledgeable, amazing astrologer, as are all the Magi astrologers. So you can learn a lot from them and from the Magi Society's websites. So, Magi astrology is predominantly what I use. It's a fantastic predictive tool. Neither the astrology transits or the astrology progressions in the longitudes or the latitude charts that we use, which is very, very rare for astrologers to use that. It's much more in depth. It's incredibly accurate. We can see, it's almost, I like to compare myself to other astrologers that aren't using Magi astrology. And to be at an adept level at Magi astrology would be the equivalent of having a 4-year degree. I mean, it takes some time and a lot of study and practice and experience and real life over the years to get to the level where you can really help yourself and help other people with the depth that you can gain from that kind of insight and from that foresight as well that Magi astrology provides. So what I want to say is that with this news coming around, because the Georgians, above all people on my friends list on Facebook, they're asking. They're very intelligent, very well-read, thinking, and very, very studied people. And their youth right now are among the best chess champions in the world, the girls especially, as I understand, and some of the women maybe too. So that's helpful to know. Magi astrology, this news about precession of the equinoxes or the change in the solar signs, it's not going to matter with Magi astrology, which is the astrology that I predominantly use. I've got something like, I don't know, maybe it's 32 videos on YouTube about this. I've done very accurate predictions before about this. To be quite frank, I've seen this kind of news come out in the past. Actually, when I've gave some astrology predictions, that sounds a bit strange and coincidental, but when I gave some prediction here in 2011, which everybody that was on my Facebook at the time, if they had read it, they saw come true, about there being an intense, stressful time here, and there was in Georgia. It was in May and June of 2011, and I predicted it before it happened. It was on Facebook, and then I later put it on YouTube. So, but at the time, they had some preacher come out and say, "Oh, that's the end of the world," and blah blah blah. This BS. And so I noticed a lot of times it's almost like a disinformation campaign comes out, because I actually had released quite a disturbing update to my astrology prediction on the country of Georgia and the likelihood, great probability of war, false flag operation, terrorist attack, war, an occupying power coming in by a gambit or by, tricky or loophole legislation or whatever and so on. You need to study. There was an article I posted on my Facebook, shared on my Facebook, from a very interesting source on false flag operations about my video and prediction on the country of Georgia and the war. I've actually had up and talked about for some years. I had a friend that I'm trying to get this lighting a little bit different because it's really not how I look in real life. But I had this up for some years because I had a friend that would often, in tears, ask me, Michael, when will we have war again? When will we be attacked again? And I worked on it for a couple of years, actually, to find that place and time in the charts and the astrology and to come to that place. But to be clear, okay, this new news about the change in solar signs and so on, it's absolutely no how to say, it's absolutely no effect on the astrology that I do, which is predominantly Magi astrology. It's not going to have any effect on that at all. So, and again, if you're going to use Western astrology, and I look at it, I still look at it, but I know that if I'm using this very popular and successful, and I love it, the Swiss American Western astrology website, I know for a fact that the Magi astrology astrogeometry software, which I consider to be the best in the world by the Magi Society, that's what I predominantly use. That's where I double check any transits from the Western astrology off this very popular, successful, and very good Swiss American Western astrology website, because they're using an outdated ephemeris. I'm using the ephemeris that is up to date and directly from NASA, because the Magi Society is a professional astrological organization worldwide with international membership, 1/3 of its members having PhDs and being the wealthiest astrological society in the world, because they have a massive focus on another side, on financial astrology, and they are legendary astrologers. I, in fact, don't know anyone that's done the public predictions on wars. I have 2 times previous in history that have proven to be extremely accurate. Actually, I did one on Syria, and I can't say that that was 100% accurate, but I can say that the charts that I originally used for that prediction were not the same charts that I used later, and there were computer anomalies with that. And I've learned to double check everything since then when doing that type of public predictive work using astrology. So I want to finish this little video. We're at 22 minutes right now, and assure you, dear friends, and thanks to the Georgians, my close Georgian friends, for asking me this last couple of days within the last 24 hours. This news comes out, and you know, I'm more clever and intelligent than to rely solely and even half on Western astrology. I look at it, I like concepts like, for example, and I found to validate concepts like enemies around every corner transit, which is transiting Chiron square natal Mars. Very important to know that one in a life, especially if you've got a heartbreak transit, because it can mean that intrigues, people using enemy methods or intrigues against you, and it can involve your relationship or money issues. And I just saw a family member that happened with. He had enemies around every corner transit, and sure enough, 2 different people. And it surprised me, because I actually thought it would be some people in his extended family. It wasn't. It was a business partner, and it was one of his friends, let's say associates, that tried to, and one did do an enemy intrigue against him. The other one, he successfully kept at a distance and dealt with that very, very strategically, because they kept telling him the whole time, look, this is the time where you've got that enemies around every corner transit, so you can be provocative and maybe not even intend to, or have provocations coming against you, or enemy intrigues coming against you, or actually full enemy action against you under such transit. So that comes from Western astrology, this enemies around every corner transit. However, when I run those aspects in the Astrogeometry software from the Magi Society, I depend on the accuracy of the Magi Society software, because it is based on NASA's most up-to-date ephemeris. Unlike the very popular Swiss American Western astrology website that I adore and that I use, that I look at, but I don't rely as a foundation on probably half of the concepts in Western astrology, because it's quite simply not as accurate, not even close, in my humble opinion, as Magi astrology, which again, and in finality, is absolutely not dependent on the precession of the equinoxes or solar signs at all. So that's the beautiful thing about Magi astrology. And again, we don't even need accuracy or a clock with and or a clock worth time, because back when this astrology was being developed, there wasn't many hospitals with birth records anyway, right? So how could you do astrology if you had to say, hey, Chuck, what time were you born? Oh, that was 7:37 a.m., eh? So, but today you still got problems with people that even if they do know, they think they know, but actually there's problems with, changes in countries' laws about the daylight savings times, whether they're using it or not, and so on and so forth. So we're really not at all dependent on exact clock time for Magi astrology, and neither are we dependent upon solar signs. Not at all. So rest easy, dear friends. For those of you I've done astrology for over the years, this news is typically, it's almost like some kind of disinformation or skeptical scientific stuff out there. There's some validity to it, no doubt, but it's not going to affect Magi astrology, which is predominantly 80% of the astrology. Actually, more like 90% of the astrology that I use is Magi astrology. It has absolutely nothing to do with this week's news on the precession of the equinoxes or the changes in solar signs. This is Michael Vanderpool, currently in Belize. Enjoy the day, enjoy the week, and thank you, my dear Georgian friends, who asked me quite intelligently about this question. And that's why I made this video. I'll end it now, almost at 27 minutes. And for those that are seeing this, maybe I'll put this on YouTube. I have a website. It's www.universalstars.net. Universalstars.net is the site where you can reach me for astrology consultations.